The lights of Meridian Gate Station gleamed against the darkness of space. Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck, watching ships from 100 different worlds come and go. He adjusted his uniform one more time. This was the biggest day of his career, maybe the biggest day in human history. Earth had finally been invited to join the Galactic Council. After 50 years of proving themselves, humans were no longer seen as the new kids who just learned how to travel faster than light. Today, Jake would negotiate Earth's first major trade deal. The other side was the Velkhari Empire, one of the oldest powers in the galaxy. "Captain Morrison, they're ready for you," said Lisa Chen, his second in command. She was nervous too, though she tried to hide it. Jake nodded and followed her to the conference room. The room was enormous. The ceiling stretched up so high that Jake could barely see it. Everything was made of smooth white stone that seemed to glow from within. At the far end of the room sat 3 figures. 2 were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and eyes that looked like liquid silver. The third was younger, smaller, but she sat in the center chair. Princess Liara of Velkhar looked almost human at first glance. Her skin had a slight purple tint, and her hair moved on its own like it was underwater. She wore robes that cost more than Jake's entire ship. When she looked at him, her eyes seemed bored already. "Captain Morrison of Earth," announced the older Velkhari on her right. His voice sounded like wind chimes. "You stand before Princess Liara, daughter of Emperor Velmoth, the Eternal, ruler of 600 worlds, keeper of the ancient flame." Jake bowed slightly, the way they had practiced. "Your Highness, it's an honor to meet you. Earth sends its greetings and hopes for a strong friendship between our peoples." Princess Liara waved her hand like she was brushing away a fly. Yes. Sit down, Captain. Let us discuss what Earth wants from us." Jake sat across from her. He pulled out his datapad and began his presentation. Earth wanted to trade resources. Humans had discovered a way to refine certain minerals that other species found difficult. In exchange, Earth wanted access to medical technology that could help cure diseases. As Jake spoke, he noticed the older Velkhari whispering to the princess. His translator implant picked up some words. Primitive methods, barely adequate, typical of young species. Jake kept his face neutral and continued. He had dealt with difficult negotiations before. The key was patience and respect, even when the other side gave you neither. Princess Liara listened with her chin resting on her hand. When Jake finished, she looked at the ceiling and sighed. "Your proposal is adequate, I suppose. Though I must say, Captain, your species has much to learn about galactic trade." "We're willing to learn, Your Highness," Jake said calmly. "Good," she said. "Because the Velkhari Empire has been conducting trade for 10,000 years. Your entire civilization is younger than some of our buildings. Perhaps it would be wise for Earth to accept a more junior role in this partnership." Jake felt something tighten in his chest, but he kept his voice even. The princess smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. "Of course you do." "How charming." She turned to her advisor. "Korseth, what do you think? Should we educate these humans in proper galactic protocols?" The old Velkhari nodded slowly. "It would be our duty, Princess. After all, they have only been in space for what, 300 years? They are like children learning to walk." Jake's jaw clenched. Lisa Chen, sitting beside him, touched his arm gently. A warning to stay calm. "We have arranged a formal dinner tonight," Princess Liara continued. "We can discuss the details then. I'm sure you'll find our hospitality quite beyond what you're used to on Earth." The meeting ended, and Jake and his team returned to their quarters. Lisa closed the door behind them and let out a long breath. "That was condescending," she said. "That's one word for it." Jake replied. He sat down heavily in a chair. "Did you hear what they were saying when they thought we couldn't understand?" "See? I heard," Lisa said. "They think we're primitives. They think this is going to be easy." Jake looked out the window at the stars. "Maybe it will be. Maybe that's what everyone thinks about humans. We're the newest members, the youngest species. We haven't earned respect yet. You don't believe that, Lisa said. No, Jake admitted. But let's see how dinner goes. Maybe she's just young and doesn't know better. That evening, Jake put on his formal uniform and headed to the dining hall. It was even more impressive than the conference room. Long tables stretched across a floor made of crystal. Floating lights drifted overhead like small stars. Representatives from a dozen species sat around, talking and laughing. Princess Liara sat at the head of the main table. She gestured for Jake to sit near her. He did. Hoping the evening would go better than the afternoon meeting, he was wrong. The dinner began with dishes Jake had never seen before. Some floated in the air. Some changed colors as you looked at them. The Velkhari servants moved like dancers, placing each course with perfect timing. Princess Liara ate delicately, occasionally explaining what each dish was. She seemed to enjoy playing the role of teacher. This is star fruit from the 6th ring of Velmoth Prime, she said, holding up something that looked like a glowing orange. It only grows once every 50 years. On Earth, I believe you still eat things that grow every season. Yes? Jake nodded politely. We do, Your Highness. Though we also have foods that are rare and special. How nice, she said in a tone that suggested it wasn't nice at all. Other guests joined the conversation. A reptilian ambassador from the Thalen worlds asked Jake about Earth's culture. Jake was happy to talk about human art, music, and literature. He mentioned how quickly human technology had advanced in recent centuries. Ah, yes, Princess Liara interrupted. I heard about that. 300 years from your first airplane to faster-than-light travel. How did you say it in human terms? Adorable? Several aliens at the table chuckled. Jake felt his face grow warm, but he kept his voice steady. We're proud of our progress, Your Highness. Of course you are, she said, taking a sip of her drink. Though, I hope you understand, such rapid advancement often means cutting corners. The Velkhari took 2,000 years to achieve the same thing. We did it properly, with patience and wisdom. Or maybe, Jake said carefully. Humans are good at solving problems quickly, Princess Liara laughed. It was a light, musical sound, but Jake heard the mockery in it. Captain Morrison, there's a difference between solving problems and stumbling forward recklessly. When a child learns to run before they can walk, they fall. Your species is running, and the galaxy is watching to see when you'll trip. Korseth, her advisor, nodded in agreement. The princess speaks wisely. Youth always believes speed equals progress. Age teaches us that true advancement requires time. Jake cut his food slowly, using the moment to control his anger. He had negotiated with warlords and pirates. He had faced down enemy ships with weapons pointed at his crew. But this casual dismissal of humanity's achievements hurt in a different way. I mean, no offense, Captain, Princess Liara continued. She clearly meant offense. It's just that the Velkhari have a saying. The star that burns brightest burns fastest. We have seen species like yours before, full of energy and ambition, but lacking the endurance for true greatness. And where are those species now? Jake asked quietly. The princess paused, her fork halfway to her mouth. Most learn to follow the guidance of their elders. They found their proper place in the galactic order. Their place, Jake repeated. Yes, she said, seemingly oblivious to the edge in his voice. Just as Earth will find its place. Under the guidance of the Velkhari Empire, your people could thrive for centuries. We could teach you so much. Lisa Chen, sitting 2 seats away, caught Jake's eye. Her expression warned him to be careful. Jake took a breath and tried another approach. Your Highness, Earth values learning from others. But we also believe in partnerships between equals. Princess Liara set down her fork and looked at Jake with something like pity. Equals? Captain Morrison, Please. The Velkari Empire has existed for 10,000 years. Your species discovered fire only a few thousand years ago. We are not equals. That's not an insult. It's simply reality. Age doesn't automatically mean superiority, Jake said. Doesn't it? The princess leaned forward. Tell me, Captain, how old are you? 45, Jake answered. 45. She repeated, then looked around at the other guests. Ladies and gentlemen, Earth has sent us a diplomat who is 45 years old. By Velkari standards, he is practically an infant. More laughter around the table. Some of it was uncomfortable, but some was genuine. Jake felt his hands curl into fists under the table. Princess Liara wasn't done. You see, this is exactly what I mean about humans not understanding their place. In the Velkari court, you wouldn't even be allowed to speak in official matters until you reached your second century. Yet Earth sends someone with your limited lifespan and experience to negotiate with eternal dynasties. She turned to her advisor. Korseth, you're 700 years old, yes? 743, Your Highness, the old Velkari replied. 743 years of wisdom and experience, the princess said, looking back at Jake. Can you imagine, Captain Morrison, how much you don't know? How much you cannot possibly understand, because you'll be dead before you even begin to grasp the complexity of galactic politics. The table had gone quiet. Even the servers had stopped moving. Everyone was watching Jake, waiting to see how the human would respond to being told his entire life meant nothing. Jake sat very still. His mind raced through options. He could argue. He could point out that human innovation came from knowing their time was limited, from the urgency of mortality driving them to achieve greatness in a single lifetime. He could mention that he had done more in his 45 years than some species did in centuries. He could defend Earth's honor and humanity's worth. Instead, he slowly placed his fork and knife on his plate. He folded his napkin with deliberate care. Then, he stood up. Princess Liara blinked in surprise. Captain Morrison, where are you going? The dinner isn't over. Jake looked at her. For 3 long seconds, he held her gaze. His face showed nothing. No anger, no hurt, no frustration. Just a calm, quiet disappointment. Then he turned toward the exit and began walking. Captain Morrison, Princess Liara called after him. We haven't finished our negotiations. Jake didn't respond. He didn't pause. He didn't look back. His boots clicked against the crystal floor with steady, measured steps. The dining hall erupted in confused whispers as Jake walked away. His security team, 2 quiet men who had been standing by the wall, immediately fell into step behind him. Their faces showed no emotion, but their presence sent a clear message. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was a choice. Princess Liara stood up, her face confused and slightly annoyed. This is highly irregular. Captain Morrison, you cannot simply leave in the middle of official negotiations. Jake reached the doorway. For a moment, it seemed like he might turn around, but he didn't. He walked through the door and disappeared from sight. Lisa Chen rose from her seat. She looked at Princess Liara with an expression that was somehow both professional and ice-cold. Your Highness, Captain Morrison has just communicated everything that needs to be said. What are you talking about? The princess demanded. He didn't say anything. Exactly, Lisa replied. When someone walks away without a word, it means words would be wasted. On behalf of Earth and its people, I inform you that we are withdrawing from these negotiations. Immediately, Lisa gathered her things and walked out. The rest of the human delegation stood as well. One by one, they left the dining hall without saying another word. The last to leave was an older man named Greg Patterson, Earth's chief science advisor. He paused at the door and looked back at Princess Liara. For what it's worth, Your Highness, he said quietly, you just made a terrible mistake. Then he was gone, and the humans were gone. and Princess Liara stood alone at her table, surrounded by shocked aliens who couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. The Thaylen ambassador broke the silence first. In 300 years of attending galactic functions, I have never seen anyone walk away from the Velkhari like that. It's insulting, Princess Liara said, but her voice lacked certainty. They have no right to be offended. I only spoke the truth. Korseth touched her shoulder gently. Perhaps, Your Highness, we should have been more diplomatic. Diplomatic? The princess turned on him. I was diplomatic. I offered them guidance, knowledge, a place in our empire. And that human just left. But even as she spoke, something nagged at her mind. The way Jake had looked at her in those final seconds. Not with anger, not with fear, with disappointment, like she had failed some test she didn't know she was taking. News of the incident spread through Meridian Gate Station faster than light itself. Within an hour, every species with a presence on the station knew that Earth had walked away from the Velkhari Empire. Within 6 hours, the story had reached 100 worlds. Within a day, the entire galaxy was talking about the human captain, who said everything by saying nothing. Jake sat in his quarters aboard the human ship Endeavor, staring at a cup of coffee. Lisa Chen had given him space for an hour, but now she knocked and entered. The Thaylen Consortium just sent a message, she said. They want to open negotiations with Earth. So did the Rigel Alliance. And get this, even the Void Dwellers sent a communication. Nobody's heard from them in 50 years. Jake looked up. What do they want? To meet with you specifically, Lisa said. They all mentioned you by name. Word is spreading, Jake. What you did tonight, walking away like that. It's resonating with a lot of species who felt looked down on by the old empires. I didn't do it to make a statement, Jake said quietly. I did it because staying would have meant accepting disrespect, and I won't do that. Not for me. Not for Earth. Not for humanity. I know, Lisa said, sitting across from him. But statements don't have to be intentional to be powerful. You showed the galaxy something important. That humans have dignity. That we won't beg for a place at the table if that place is beneath it. Jake sipped his coffee. It was cold now. What's Earth Command saying? They're backing you completely, Lisa said with a small smile. The president sent a personal message. She said you made her proud. The whole planet is proud. And the Velkhari? Lisa's smile faded. Radio silence so far. But intelligence reports suggest there's chaos in their diplomatic corps. 3 species are apparently renegotiating their treaties with the Empire. The Velkhari economy is built on maintaining their network of junior partners. If those relationships start breaking down, it's not my problem, Jake said firmly. I didn't do this to hurt them. I did it because some lines can't be crossed. If Princess Liara can't see humans as equals, then we have nothing to discuss. Quote, over the next week, more and more species reached out to Earth. Jake found himself in meeting after meeting, but these were different. These species treated him with respect. They asked questions and actually listened to the answers. They didn't lecture or condescend. They negotiated, like partners. The Thaylen were particularly interesting. Their ambassador, a wise old reptile named Es's Wrath, met with Jake in a simple conference room with no fancy decorations. Captain Morrison, Srath said in his hissing voice, my people have endured Velkhari superiority for 600 years. We signed treaties that favored them because we believed we had no choice. Then we watched a human stand up and walk away, and we realized something. What's that? Jake asked. That we always had a choice, Es's Wrath replied. We simply lacked the courage to make it. Your people are young, yes, but youth has a strength that age forgets. You remember that dignity matters. Jake nodded slowly. Ambassador, the Thaylen have wisdom and resources Earth needs. We have innovation and determination you might find useful. Why don't we discuss what a real partnership could look like? Kessis Wrath's eyes glowed brighter, which Jake had learned was their version of a smile. Meanwhile, back on the Velkhari homeworld, Princess Liara stood before her father's throne. Emperor Velmoth was ancient even by Velkhari standards, and he was not pleased. "Do you understand what you've done?" he asked, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Father, I only spoke the truth." "You spoke like a fool." The Emperor's shout made Liara step back. 3 species have already begun withdrawing from our treaties. 5 more are questioning the terms. The galactic community is laughing at us. But the humans showed us something we had forgotten, the Emperor interrupted. That respect cannot be demanded, only earned. And you, my daughter, threw away respect we spent centuries building. Princess Liara sat alone in her chambers, something she rarely did. Usually, she surrounded herself with advisors, servants, and courtiers. But tonight, she needed to think. The conversation with her father had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. A soft chime indicated someone at her door. "Enter," she called. Korseth came in, moving slowly. He looked older than she'd ever seen him, and tired. "Your Highness, I must apologize." "You?" Liara was surprised. "What did you do wrong?" "I failed to prepare you properly," the old Velkhari said. "I let you believe that age and power were enough. I should have taught you that true strength comes from earning respect, not demanding it." Liara turned away. "Everyone acts like I committed some great crime. I only pointed out facts. Humans are young. Their lives are short. These things are true. Facts without wisdom are just noise," Korseth said gently. "May I show you something?" He activated a holographic display. Files and images appeared in the air. "This is Captain Jake Morrison's record. I reviewed it after the dinner. I should have done so before." Liara watched as the information scrolled past. Born on Earth in the city of Boston. Joined the military at 18. Fought in the colony wars when Mars and the asteroid belt fought for independence. Decorated 12 times for valor. At age 25, he negotiated the peace treaty that ended the war, preventing millions of deaths. "He's a soldier," Liara said dismissively. "Keep watching," Korseth urged. More files appeared. Jake had served as Earth's ambassador to the Centauri colonies. He'd established trade agreements with 3 nearby systems before Earth even joined the Galactic Council. He'd personally rescued 16 crew members from a damaged ship, walking into a radiation-filled compartment with no protection because there was no time to wait. He was given Earth's highest honor, Korseth said. The Congressional Star. Only 20 humans in history have received it. And, look at this, a recording played. Jake stood before the Human Congress, speaking about Earth's place in the galaxy. "We don't seek to dominate," his younger self said. "We don't expect others to bow to us, but we will not bow to them either. We seek partnership, friendship, and mutual respect, and we will accept nothing less." The recording ended. Liara stood silent. "Your Highness," Korseth said quietly, "you mocked this man for having only 45 years of life. But in those 45 years, he has achieved more than most beings do in centuries. You called humans reckless for advancing quickly. But their speed comes from knowing their time is limited. Every human lives with the knowledge that they have, perhaps 100 years to make their mark on the universe. That knowledge drives them." Liara felt something uncomfortable in her chest. "But we live for thousands of years. We have so much more time to learn and grow." "Yes," Korseth agreed. "But do we use that time wisely? Or do we become complacent, believing we have forever?" The Velkhari Empire was once innovative and bold. Now we rely on what we built long ago. Humans build new things every generation because they must. They cannot afford to wait. Liara sat down heavily. "I offended him deeply, didn't I?" "You dismissed his entire existence," Korseth said. You implied that his life, his achievements, his very being, meant nothing because he won't live as long as we do. Imagine if someone told you that everything you've accomplished was worthless because you're only 19. I'm not just 19, Liara protested. I'm a princess. I've studied. She stopped, hearing her own words. She was defending herself the same way Jake should have defended himself. But he hadn't. He'd simply left, letting his silence speak louder than any argument. Over the next weeks, Liara followed the news obsessively. Earth was thriving. Jake Morrison had negotiated treaties with 6 different species. The agreements were fair, balanced, and profitable for everyone involved. Other species were calling him the most effective diplomat in a generation. Meanwhile, the Velkhari Empire was struggling. 2 more species had broken their treaties. Trade routes were being redirected. Younger civilizations were looking to Earth for partnership instead of to Velkhar for guidance. The old order was crumbling, and it had started with one human walking away from one dinner. Liara's father called her to the throne room. She expected another lecture, but instead, he looked sad. "Daughter," he said, "I have decided you need to understand what you've done. Not as punishment, but as education. You will travel to Earth." "Earth?" Liara was shocked. "Father, surely, you will go without guards, without servants, without your title," the Emperor continued. "You will request a meeting with Captain Morrison, and you will learn from him what we have forgotten." "What if he refuses to see me?" Liara asked quietly. "Then you will learn what it feels like to be dismissed," her father replied. "Either way, you will learn." 3 days later, Liara stood in a small ship, alone, except for the pilot. She wore simple clothes, not royal robes. She carried nothing that marked her as a princess. As they approached Earth, she looked down at the blue and green planet, so small and young compared to her homeworld. "We're receiving landing clearance," the pilot said. "Earth Control is directing us to Seattle." Liara's heart beat faster. She had sent a formal request through proper channels, asking for a meeting with Captain Morrison. She had been honest about who she was and why she wanted to meet. For 2 days, she'd received no response. Then, this morning, a simple message came. "Meeting approved. Cafe Meridian, Seattle. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. local time. No formality. No official protocols. Just a time and a place." Now, as her ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, Liara wondered what she would say. How do you apologize for something so fundamental? How do you admit you were completely wrong? The ship landed. Liara stepped out into rain, something she'd read about but never experienced. It was cold and strange and oddly beautiful. A car was waiting to take her to Seattle. She rode in silence, watching this young world pass by. Humans everywhere, living their brief lives, building their cities, creating their art, loving their families. All of them, knowing they had so little time, and using every moment of it. She saw children playing, old people laughing, young couples holding hands. Every single one of them racing against a clock that the Velkhari never heard. The car stopped. "Cafe Meridian," the driver said. Liara stepped out. Through the window, she could see him. Jake Morrison sat at a small table, reading a book. He looked calm, peaceful, as if meeting the princess who insulted him was no more significant than any other appointment. Liara took a deep breath and opened the door. A small bell chimed as Liara pushed open the cafe door. The smell of coffee and fresh bread filled the air. Humans sat at various tables, talking, laughing, working on devices. Nobody paid attention to the alien princess who had just entered. Here, she was just another person. Jake looked up from his book. Their eyes met. He didn't smile, didn't frown, just nodded once and gestured to the empty chair across from him. Liara walked over on shaking legs and sat down. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Jake closed his book and set it aside. Liara noticed it was a collection of human poetry, old and worn like it had been read many times. "Thank you for seeing me," Liara said finally. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "You came a long way," Jake replied. His tone was neutral, neither warm nor cold. "Coffee? Yes, please," Jake signaled to the server, a young human woman with bright red hair. "2 coffees, please. Cream and sugar on the side." The server nodded and walked away. Liara watched her go, trying to gather her thoughts. She had rehearsed this conversation 100 times on the journey to Earth, but now all her prepared words seemed inadequate. "Captain Morrison," she began. "I came to apologize." "I assumed so," Jake said. "I was wrong," Liara continued. "About humans, about you, about everything I said at that dinner. I was arrogant and ignorant, and I insulted you and your entire species. There's no excuse for what I said." The server returned with 2 cups of coffee and a small container of cream and sugar. Jake thanked her with a warm smile, then turned his attention back to Liara. "Go on," he said. Liara felt tears forming. Among the Velkhari, crying was considered a sign of weakness. But she didn't care anymore. "I learned about you after you left, about your service in the colony wars, about the peace treaty you negotiated, about the people you saved. You've done more in your 45 years than I've done in 19, more than most Velkhari do in centuries." She paused to wipe her eyes. "I also learned something else. That humans live the way they do because they know their time is limited. You don't have the luxury of waiting. Every discovery, every achievement, every moment of love or beauty or courage has to happen now because there might not be a later. And I mocked that. I mocked the very thing that makes you strong." Jake listened without interrupting. He sipped his coffee slowly, his expression thoughtful. "My people live for thousands of years," Liara went on. "We think that makes us wise, but maybe it just makes us slow. We have so much time that we forget to value each moment. We become comfortable, complacent. We stop innovating because we think we already know everything. But humans, you're different. You're always moving, always building, always reaching for something more." She looked directly at Jake. "I came here to apologize, yes, but also to ask if you could teach me. Not as a princess to a subject, but as a student to a teacher. I want to understand what I missed. I want to be better." Jake set down his coffee cup. For the first time since she'd arrived, his expression softened slightly. "Your apology is noted, Princess. And I appreciate the honesty. But understand something. My silence that day wasn't an insult to you. It was a choice not to waste words on someone who wouldn't understand them." The words stung, but Liara nodded. "I understand that now." "Do you?" Jake leaned forward. "Because here's what I need you to understand. Respect isn't given because of age or power. It's earned through actions. Every human who accomplishes something, who makes a difference, who lives with dignity and purpose, they earn their respect one day at a time. We don't expect the galaxy to bow to us, but we won't bow to anyone else either. That's fair." Liara said quietly. "You can spend the next 1,000 years learning from others," Jake continued. "Or you can spend them believing you already know everything. That choice is yours. But if you choose to learn, truly learn, then you need to accept that sometimes a species that's only been in space for 300 years might teach you something valuable. Sometimes a person with 45 years of life might be wiser than someone with 400. Liara felt something shift inside her. It was humility. Real humility. Not the fake, diplomatic kind she'd been taught. "You're right. And I'm sorry it took losing everything for me to see it." Jake picked up his coffee again. "You didn't lose everything. You lost some treaties, some trade deals, some political power, but you gained something more important. You gained awareness. The question is, what you'll do with it." "What should I do?" Liara asked. "That's the wrong question," Jake said. "I'm not here to tell you what to do. That's the old way of thinking. where the elder species tells the younger one how to live. The right question is, what do you think you should do? Liara thought about it. I think I should go home and help my people change. We've relied on our age and our power for too long. We've stopped growing because we forgot how. Maybe I can remind them. Maybe you can, Jake agreed. But change is hard, especially for a civilization that's been the same for thousands of years. Will you help me? Liara asked. Not as someone under Velkhari authority, but as a partner? An equal? Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up, and Liara's heart sank, thinking he was leaving again. But instead, he walked to the counter, paid for their coffees, and returned with 2 pastries. Danish, he said, setting one in front of her. It's a human food. Try it. Liara took a small bite. It was sweet and buttery and unlike anything she'd ever tasted. It's good. My grandmother used to make these, Jake said, sitting back down. But in that time, she raised 6 children, helped build a colony on Mars, and taught me that the length of your life doesn't matter as much as what you do with it. He looked at Liara with something that might have been the start of respect. So yes, princess. I'll help you. Not because I forgive you completely, because trust takes time to rebuild, but because you just learned the first lesson that matters. What lesson? Liara asked. Knowing when to ask for help, Jake said. Knowing when to admit you don't have all the answers. That's the beginning of real wisdom. Over the next weeks, Jake and Liara met regularly. Sometimes they discussed politics and diplomacy. Sometimes they just talked about life. Jake introduced her to other humans, to their art and music and dreams. Liara began to understand that humanity's strength wasn't just in their innovation or their determination. It was in their connection to each other, their ability to love and hope and strive even knowing their time was limited. Eventually, Liara returned to Velkhar. But she was different now. She spoke before the Velkhari Council about change, about humility, about learning from younger species instead of dismissing them. It was hard, and many resisted, but slowly, things began to shift. Earth's reputation in the galaxy continued to grow. They became known not for their age or their power, but for their dignity, their innovation, and their unwillingness to accept disrespect. Other young species looked to them as an example. Older species, including the Velkhari, began to listen to them as equals, and it all started because one man chose silence over anger, dignity over argument, and walking away over accepting disrespect. Jake Morrison never spoke about that night at the dinner. He didn't need to. His actions had said everything that mattered. The human principle spread across the galaxy. Respect yourself enough to demand respect from others, and be willing to stand alone if necessary. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all.